Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Britton's Hangout Hour episode 124, I think. I think it's 124. Um, I'm here today with Thomas Wrights from, Thomas Wrights. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, it's been a quiet Friday afternoon on my end. No school today, so I'm feeling pretty good, and I got everything
Nice.
I needed to do turned in, so I'm feeling good. It is not a bad day in the Summers household.
Glad to hear it.
How are you this fine afternoon,
Yeah,
wherever you're at?
doing well. It's pretty cloudy outside right now, looking like it might rain. We'll see. Which would be nice because it's been pretty hot over here lately. But yeah, most of the today's been pretty chill. Just did some reading and browsing through YouTube and gonna watch a movie later tonight with some friends, so that should be fun.
Yeah, after this, I'm probably going to, because I don't know if you watch Talking Story at all or if you know who they are,
Oh
but
yeah.
I'm a mod on their Discord server, so they're going
Oh
to
cool.
be watching Apocalypse Now tonight, so I'm gonna hop
Oh
in and
man.
hang out with them. I've already seen the movie, so but I want to be a part of that because it's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, that's one of those that is on my watch list of ones to get to. I've been trying to go back and watch a lot of older films and more acclaimed films. Tonight, me and my friends are actually watching the second Pirates of the Caribbean movie.
Oh,
we're going through that trilogy. So
that's a good one. I've um still think the first one's the best, but
mhm.
um I wouldn't say I hold that as much fondness as a uh Star Wars or Indiana Jones or one of those franchises, if you will.
Mhm. Yeah, it's funny. I guess what I like about those movies is I would agree with you that Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, and Indiana Jones, those are like my top three like film franchises to me. But I guess I like Pirates so much because there's not quite anything else quite like it. Like I can't think of another big budget pirate fantasy epic. Like I don't think there's
That's
really
true. I
quite
actually
anything else like that.
I actually like the second and third movies. I remember watching the third one in theaters and just thinking, "What is going on here?" But I mean, it looked cool, so that was always
Hmm.
fun. Um, yeah. I like Davy Jones quite a bit as as an
Hmm.
antagonist. He's a lot of fun.
Definitely, he's easily for me is the best part of 2 and 3. I think if 2 and 3 didn't have Davy Jones, they would not be nearly as good.
Yeah, it does get a little convoluted though. I'll give them that. So yeah. So as I like to do sometimes when I have booktubers on, what led you to booktube as or YouTube or it's technically YouTube, but like what in booktube specifically? And I think if I recall right, you've even done some movie content as well. I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, yeah. So my journey's been an interesting one. To take you back to the beginning, I got started into BookTube specifically because I had been watching a lot of other content creators at that point who were really into it, and I had been wanting to get back into reading. And then a couple of years ago, I got laid off from my job at the time, so I had a lot of free time on my hands and wasn't doing anything. And I just, at some point, I thought, you know what? I've always thought about doing a YouTube channel.
Mm,
Now's as good a time as any when I have all this time on my hands.
mm.
So I got into it. My first video was a video on the first Wheel of Time book, which is a series that I still need to finish. I'm sure there are many in my audience who are eagerly waiting for me to get to book three. It has been so long. But
I've never felt the itch to read any of those books, so
yeah, is that
good
right?
luck, sir. Hope
Well,
you
I appreciate it. Thank you.
hope it goes well on your end.
Thank you. Yeah, and then with the movie content I've done, honestly, that came about just kind of out of happenstance in some ways, because my first movie review that I did was over Rebel Moon, and that
Mm.
video I just kind of did on a whim because I thought the movie was just so bad that I just felt like I needed to get my feelings out there in some form or fashion. And so I watch a lot of movie YouTubers as well. And so that's why I kind of sit in a bit of a weird place now with my channel, that I've expanded it out to not just doing books, but just sci-fi and fantasy media in general, because I've discovered, well, I mean, I play video games, I watch movies, I read books, and I don't really want to limit myself in terms of only being able to talk about books, because there's a lot of other stuff in other media that I would want to talk about as well.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I like stories, and I'll talk about them in any of their forms. Though I've mainly focused on books and comics on this version of the channel. I have done other things, like I've done movie discussions and reviews before, and I did some video games. I did have some music reviews once upon a time, but they were pretty god awful, so I got rid of them. Um, but yeah, mostly books and comics nowadays is what I do, because there's a good community on BookTube or whatever this side of the internet we're on, and I've just kind of tapped into it, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I found the most appealing about BookTube specifically is the community. I personally think, compared to a lot of other subcultures on the internet, I think BookTube is one of the more positive and uplifting ones.
Mm.
Like any community, you're always going to have some level of toxicity and things of that nature. But I have noticed that when I've made content on books, the comments tend to be far nicer than when I make content based on movies. People tend to get way more aggressive in their remarks.
Yeah, you meet some interesting people I was about to say, I think like video games are the worst, because my god, you'll
Mm,
get some nasty comments from the video game
certainly.
circles. Um, but yeah, no, BookTube's generally nice for the most part. Like there have been some spats and controversies,
Mhm.
but generally everyone gets along for the most part, so that's always nice.
Definitely. I've never been one who's ever wanted to get involved in drama or anything like that. That's not why, and I'm sure for yourself too, that's not why you started making videos. You did it because it's something you like to do. You want to talk about things that inspire you, that you feel like you have something that you can add to the discussion on. And I think that's another part of the reason why I've kind of branched out from just doing booktube stuff, because a lot of people will be eager for me, for example, to get to the next Sanderson book. And while I do like Sanderson, I don't feel like I can really say anything that hasn't been said by someone else already,
I haven't
just
read
because
Sanderson
he
yet.
is so talked about. Yeah, I've only read some of his spin-off stuff. I'm still waiting to get to Mistborn, and I'm sitting on the Stormlight archive. That one is just like, it's like Mount Everest to me. It's like, okay, I can't do Wheel of Time and Stormlight at the same time. That's just going to be way too much.
Yeah,
So,
it's another one of those. Just I haven't felt the itch for it yet, and no, nothing anyone said has really piqued my interest in checking out Sanderson. I mean, I respect the guy a lot, though. He's very forward thinking
mhm,
in how oh, look how books can be consumed by audiences and having a relationship with your audience. I
definitely.
appreciate that, but I've never really felt the itch to read any of his books, because I just have some fundamental disagreements with him about like how he does like world building and all that stuff,
Hmm,
and magic. I don't know if
hmm.
that would be very interesting to me, but you never know. Maybe I'll read one of his books and go, oh man, this is great. I doubt it,
Certainly.
considering what I've heard, but maybe you never know.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the interesting things, is that a lot of people seem to really like Sanderson for his world building. And while I do think his
I
world
well,
building is good, I actually like his characters more than I like his worlds personally.
well, let me back up. I really like world building.
Mm,
Actually, well, why did I say world building? I don't world building. I guess is fine, but it's more as magic than anything else that
Hmm.
I kind of have issues with because he kind of just turns it into like another form of science, which can
Hmm.
be cool, and that's been done in fantasy. Like it's been kind of
Hmm.
like, oh, what if magic was like an academic thing? Like what if magic could be studied? Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell played with that concept, and China Mieville's Perdido Street Station plays with that a little bit, but I don't know. It's just like for me, when you get something with like rules and this is how it works, it tends to become a little predictable to me.
Hmm.
But you never know.
I can definitely see that. Because I think that's one of the fun elements of fantasy is that in some ways you have far less restrictions than in other genres because you can just do basically whatever you want. Whereas,
Yeah,
if you
exactly.
set
The
your
sky's the
story.
limit.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you set a story in our world in the modern day, and then all of a sudden a dragon shows up, people are going to have, question marks if you didn't label your book as being fantasy or urban fantasy from the beginning.
Well, I was about to say, yeah. I mean, there's people who read that. It's just called urban fantasy.
Right, exactly.
um, yeah. I mean, what you were saying earlier about finding your voice on BookTube, it took me a long time to finally get that because I don't really think I'm the best speaker. I have to make like bullet points, and if you watch my videos, you'll see me kind of looking at my
Hmm.
screen there where I have my bullet points. Um, but it took me. I don't really think I'm that good at speaking. But then I'm like, I don't know if you ever watched Brian Lee Durfee before, but I
Mhm.
watched Brian Lee Durfee, and it's just him and his cell phone, just like, and he's just BSing about books for 20
Right.
minutes. I'm like, I have no excuse whatsoever. I got to do this. So yeah, I've been at it for a while now. So yeah, here I am.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've found for myself once I discovered more of the video essay format of not having my face on camera and doing more of just showing images or video clips with my voice talking over, I just feel way more comfortable with that format than versus winging it on camera. I go back to some of my old videos and cringe a bit because I don't think I'm doing a very good job, but again, that's one of the fun things I found about YouTube is that okay, you're not expected, or at least you shouldn't be expected to be the next Murphy Napier, Daniel Green, Brian Lee Durfee. No, you just be yourself, and you pick whatever format works best for you and the content that you like to talk about.
Yeah, and the audience will come, as I've
Hmm.
learned, because I've done a couple live streams. I'm like, I'm sure no one will really show up. I'll just hang out with some friends of mine for a little bit and chill out. Then like 10 people will show up, and you're just like, well, okay, I guess I'm actually doing something on here, you know. But you've kind of made it to the big leagues a little bit. You've been on Two to Ramble, and
That's
you've got
true.
you've got Vera on your channel, which I'm trying to get
Yep,
her on the podcast. I need to
that'd be
get back.
cool.
I need to get back in touch with her because I texted her on Discord a few months ago, like, hey, you want to come on my podcast? And she's like, yes, but I got a couple others I'm on at the moment, so we're gonna have to wait. So I'll have to check in with her again. But also, Two to Ramble, the same thing. They just take forever to, to respond on the email. I send them an
Yeah.
email like, hey, when you want to do this, and they're like, oh man, so sorry for missing the email. And then I sent them another one, and it's like it's been 3 days. I'm sure they're busy though.
Yeah.
It's fine. But
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's I've been very blessed and very fortunate to be able to be connected to those channels even if in a little way. I still chat with them every now and then, which is nice. And it's really cool to see how both of their channels really exploded. And that was one of the moments where felt like I had kind of made it, quote unquote, on YouTube when I was able to go from being like, "Oh, I'm watching these channels," to, "Oh, I'm actually interacting with them as I would anyone else." It was kind of surreal in a
yeah, that
way,
that
and
was
I
me when I was
was
on Dear Doctor
man.
Fantasy with Philip Chase. I'm like, yes, I'm
Oh, very cool.
starting to make it on BookTube. Like that,
Nice.
why read, and chatting with nuts. If I go on either one of, I've only gone on one of those, but if I go on either of those other two, I have made it as a booktuber. I will never. I don't think I'll go higher. Unless maybe I'm on like
Gotcha.
Daniel Green's channel or something, which that would be
Yeah,
insane.
something really big like that, but in either case, again, that's one of the things I've liked about BookTube because most of the movie YouTubers I follow, that I've reached out to a couple of people, but I've never gotten responses because I mean their channels are in the millions of subscribers,
Mm-hmm.
whereas these channels are small enough that you are able to actually interact with them, which is always really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do see you have some you do have some movies. You've done um you've done the Riddick movies, which I remember those back when I was a kid. Yeah, I think the first couple of those are actually pretty underrated. I like a few of them.
Yes, yes, I enjoyed doing those, and then the ones that seem to have
And then
really
Running
gotten
Man, which I mean, I see you've
yeah.
covered the book and the movie. Man, what was the whiplash like when you read the book? I'm curious.
It was quite something because yeah, tonally
It's
two
so
completely
different.
different animals. Yeah, exactly. One is all fantastical and lighthearted and kind of silly, and then the other's really grounded, kind of borderline nihilistic in a lot of its tone and themes. So yeah,
Yeah,
very
when you read the
very
Bachman
different.
books, that's some of the darkest things that
Mm.
Stephen King's ever done, as far as I'm concerned, anyway.
Which is really saying something for Stephen King in
Oh,
general.
sure, but like, yeah, there's often like there's like a heart under there, in a
Mm,
lot of his books. I don't know how many
mhm,
of King's books you've read, but like, there's always like a heart in there for the most
mm,
part, anyway. But like,
mhm,
he can do bleak. I mean, you can read like Pet Cemetery or even Running Man. Like, he can do bleak. He can do it very,
mhm.
very well. So,
Definitely, and I am looking forward to as well because I'll plan on doing a video on that when that comes out. Is the Running Man remake movie is
oh
coming out
yes,
at the end of the year, which they're saying is supposed to be closer to the tone of the original novel. I'll be curious to see if they can pull that off.
yeah, I think Edgar Wright's doing it, which
Hmm.
he generally does more fun. I mean, he can do dramatic,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I don't know if he can go that dark. I don't think I've seen him go that dark yet. So,
It'll definitely be different in terms of his filmography, like you're
so
saying.
good luck, Wright.
Thank you,
God
thank you.
bless you, man. I mean, I guess we'll see. I do like his movies. But yeah, that must have been interesting reading The Running Man and going like, "Geez, this is way different than the
Yes,
movie." So
definitely.
dark. Oh man. But yeah, no, yeah, it's good. It's good. It's a good book. I haven't. There's
Mhm,
not been a lot of bad Stephen King books, unless it's like the
mhm.
Tommy Knockers or like
I've heard that one's
when he
pretty
when he
bad.
when he does like alien invasions, he generally doesn't do that good. Like Under the Dome, not great. Tommy Knockers, not that great either. Dreamcatcher, no. It's really good, and I remember someone pointed out like, isn't it technically an alien invasion? I'm like, I guess it is. I didn't really think of it like that, but sure, yeah. Well, yeah, okay, yeah, he can do alien invasion, but
Yeah,
for the most part, he can't do alien invasion very well.
I think that's why maybe the reason why those other ones don't work as well is because in something like it, from what I understand, the sci-fi element is more downplayed and it's more subtle,
Hmm.
whereas when he tries to put it front and center, I don't know if he's quite as good at that. I think
I mean,
it
he
seems
can,
like
and he
yeah.
can do sci-fi. Like Running Man
Mhm.
is very much
That's true. That
speculative
is technically
fiction, and
sci-fi.
The Long Walk, which is another dystopian book, another just really dark book that he did. Also a dystopian. So I mean, he can do it, but I don't know. Alien invasions, for the most part, with the exception of it, he has a hard time with them.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Though I guess in its case, it's like an eldritch being. I don't know. Go read the book.
Right, exactly.
It goes into detail about it.
Mm.
But yeah, you've been busy on your channel though, from the looks of it.
Yeah, I've been trying to post stuff. I had gotten back into a bit of a streak this past couple of months of doing a video every week. Um, I had just been really trying to push myself, especially since I'm getting really close to hitting that 1,000 subscribers mark,
Mm-hmm.
and I just it's within my grasp, and I just will probably need a few more videos to get there. Because some stuff I have coming down the line. I really want to go over the 300 graphic novel as well as
Mm.
Watchmen, and then also talk about their film adaptations because
Mm.
I like both of them for different reasons in some ways, but
Yeah,
I
I've
like
seen you've been reading
them.
some
So
comics on your Goodreads anyway, and
yes, yes.
I should note I saw you gave Holy Terror 2 stars. That was too kind, my friend. That book is absolutely abominable.
Yeah, so
But I digress.
my reasoning behind that is that even though, don't get me wrong, Holy Terror, it lived up to its bad reputation. It is not good. It just doesn't work. I think maybe the only reason I gave it 2 stars is because it was an interesting read, even if it wasn't a particularly good one. I felt like I got a bit of into
Sure,
the
I know
mind of
that like
Frank Miller a bit.
I know that Frank Miller was kind of in like a dark place when he did that book. So I mean,
Right.
I'm like that's beautiful and all, but it's still a god awful book. Like I would be embarrassed if I put that out. And to his credit,
Certainly.
he has kind of gone like I went a little too far with that one. So
Yes, I did see that he has walked back some things of saying, like, yeah, I don't think I was in a good emotional place when I wrote that.
yeah, so I'll give you some credit there, Frank. But oh man, that book is just yeah, not one of his best works. And I already have a very tumultuous relationship with um, Frank Miller in general. So there you go.
Yeah.
I'm curious what you'll make of the film adaptations. I think 300 is one of Zack Snyder's better films. I don't really like a lot
hmm
of Zack Snyder's movies. But 300 is one of his better ones because it seems like he was fully aware of what he was doing and he didn't take it too seriously, as because a
hmm
lot of his films are just over serious.
Definitely. Yeah, I would definitely say that 300 and Watchmen are probably his two best films, at least for me, because they're the most direct adaptations of their source material, even if
Mm-hmm.
they do change some things here and there. I think, and I will probably go into this in a future video that I won't spoil here, but I'm working on a big project with that. But
All right,
basic
I won't push you on that then.
but basically, I think Zack Snyder, I think he works very well as a visual director when he has good material to work with.
Mm-hmm.
When he has to come up with his own stuff, I think is where he really starts to stumble.
Yeah, I mean, like, get like a good writer to give him a script, and he'll direct the shit out of it, and it would be perfect. But
Exactly.
no, like Zack
Exactly.
Snyder thinks he's like Stanley Kubrick. I'm just like, dude, just just stick to directing, man.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's funny because I said that in my Rebel Moon video. I was digging through a lot of old clips of him talking about the process of directing and like making the movie, and you dig into it, and he's basically just like, "Yeah, I was just kind of thinking, what if we did Star Wars but R-rated?" And I'm kind of like, but you need more than that. You need more than that to make a good
Yeah, no,
story and a
he
good
just loves
movie.
to shit on like things that are sorry for my language, but
You're good, man.
he just loves to crap all over like I don't even know if he means to. I don't
Yeah.
know, but he just likes to crap on like properties for whatever reason.
He definitely has that sort of teenage edge lord kind of vibe to him where
Yeah,
he's just kind
exactly.
of
Yeah.
like, wouldn't it be cool if Batman killed people with guns? Wouldn't that be edgy? And I'm like, I don't want to see that though in a Batman movie.
If you want to do like a now, I think he would make a great Punisher movie. Like if you get like a
Mm.
good script in there, get Zach to do his visual magic. I think he would do a great Punisher movie.
Oh
But
yeah.
that's not the world we're in, unfortunately.
Mhm. Yeah, so on the subject of comics, if you don't mind me asking you
Mm,
a question,
mm-hmm.
as someone who I am just now getting into comics, I've been
Yeah,
going
I've seen
through.
you're kind of starting with the greats, if you will. Though
Yeah,
Frank Miller
exactly.
and I'll go into that if the conversation goes there. But I do see that you've been kind of going on like Alan Moore, Frank Miller.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I really gravitate to a lot of the classics and older authors just in general, and I like
Hmm.
seeing how genres evolve over time because obviously Frank Miller and Alan Moore were both super influential for the comic book industry and just superheroes in general. But yeah, and then I've been going through Marvel started releasing their premiere collection this
Yeah,
year.
I saw. I actually have the Daredevil Born Again premiere edition of that book
Nice.
because I'm
Yep,
like I gotta pick this up. So it's
yeah,
one
I
of I think
just
it's one of
read
Frank's
that
better
one.
works.
Mm.
Daredevil Born Again.
Yeah, I really liked that one. The Black Panther one I didn't like as much. It was okay, but it just didn't quite do anything for me. I think it was called "The Nation Under Our Feet" was the name
Yeah,
of the
I'm
storyline.
aware of Ta-Nehisi Coates. I know he
Mm.
can be a bit polemical, which
Hmm.
can be good if the story you're telling is interesting. But I don't know if he's like has the discipline to pull that off. But I haven't read a lot of his stuff, so I'm only aware of him from like articles he's written and other stuff where he's very polemical.
Right. Yeah.
Which doesn't always interest me because you can go real bad with that real quick.
Certainly. Certainly. Yeah. Because
One thing
that
I
was.
hate the most in books is when it starts preaching at me. I hate it.
Mm,
Don't do
hmm.
it. Even authors I
Yeah.
like have done it, and I just go like, don't. You're
Right.
skirting a line
Exactly.
there, buddy. Now there is a line there, but I don't want to go into that. But yes, I've seen you start to kind of dip your toes into comics.
Yeah, and I've been really enjoying it so far. I'm a big Batman fan. That's probably my personal favorite superhero. So it's been fun to get into the comics. All the different iterations, of course. There are so many different ones for Batman, but that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite Frank. I don't know if you've read this yet, because I know you're kind of going through Frank Miller at the moment. But my favorite thing he has ever done is Batman Year One, that he did with
Mm,
Mazzucchelli, who did Daredevil Born Again. Um, love it. I prefer it even
gotcha.
over Dark Knight Returns, Sin City. I haven't read his actual Daredevil run, but I think it's better than Born Again because like Born Again has a
Mm.
bit of an overblown climax in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah.
Year One I just think is better.
Mm.
Which I'm ready for the flame wars from the Frank Miller fans because I know they're a very passionate bunch. But I even prefer it over Dark Knight Returns, and I mean Dark Knight
Mm.
Returns is a great story.
Hmm.
The art though, I won't go there.
Yeah. Yes, which was another big problem, not to bring us back to Holy Terror, but that was one of the biggest problems with that, is
We've
that
come full circle.
that was probably some of the worst artwork from Frank Miller,
It sucks too because
unfortunately.
Miller can draw. Like you can like
Mhm.
look at some of the better images from Dark Knight Returns or like Sin City. Like the dude can
Yes.
draw. Like I
Mhm.
can't take that. He's not like a Rob Liefeld where I just think he's god awful. Like he can
Mhm.
do it. I just don't like his particulars. It's ugly. It's
Mhm.
unpleasant to look at. Even 300, which I like just fine. Like it's just ugly as hell. I don't like looking at it.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
get like with some stories like Sin City and Dark Knight Returns, like that kind of adds to the really grimy atmosphere of the whole thing. But I
Right.
just don't like it very much.
No, I get you. I get you, and it's definitely some of his stuff is an acquired taste for sure. Because some of his artwork, I even went back. I've been reading Ronin as well,
I need to
and
read that again because I was looking through it the other day and I remember just kind of thinking it was like kind of mid tier, but I'm like, the art
yeah,
in this actually isn't as terrible as I remember it being. Like
yeah,
this is actually pretty solid. Maybe I should give this another look. But I haven't
yeah.
done it yet. But I
I've
remember thinking
I've felt
like,
it's
bro,
pretty
Samurai
good so
Jack did
far.
this and just did it a lot better. Just
Yes, exactly.
sorry,
I
bro.
feel the same way.
And also you got that Gennady Tartakovsky animation, which is really bouncy
Mhm.
and like fluid, so that always helps.
Definitely. Yeah, great show, and, yeah, sorry, I think that show executes that premise better than
Though,
Ronin
if
does.
you though I imagine, because I see you're reading Ronin at the moment, I imagine you're reading it and going like, "Oh, that's where Samurai Jack came from."
Yes, exactly. Yep, seeing a lot of parallels for sure.
Yeah, I remember calling the art style a you know what, that might be a little too offensive for the children, but I basically was like, it was a smorgasbord of Lone Wolf and Cub and Mobius, the great comic book artist.
Mm,
Which
mm.
yeah, I know you're just getting into it, so you probably don't know what that is. But if you read Lone Wolf and Cub, which I've only read like a volume of, but you'll read that and be like, oh, so that's where Frank Miller got Ronin
Mm,
from. So there you go.
gotcha, gotcha.
Great series though. I've only read the first volume, but it's really good. So
Mm.
that's yeah. I'll see you've read Watchmen by. On the other side, while I'm mixed on Frank Miller, my favorite comic book writer is Alan Moore. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I really, I mean, I had seen the movie before I had read the comic,
yeah.
and I remember liking the movie when I watched it. But now I feel like I get it now. It's like it finally clicked as to, oh, this is why this story is so beloved, and this is why it had such an impact on the superhero genre, and just, oh my gosh, the artwork for Watchmen is so far probably my favorite artwork in any comic book that I've read. Of course, I
Oh
haven't
yeah,
read a
Dave
ton,
Gibbons.
but it's so good.
I think he gets lowballed a lot when people talk about Watchmen because everyone's like, "Oh man, Alan Moore," and rightfully so. I mean, it's a great story, but
Hmm.
but you know, just the miracle that Dave Gibbons managed to take everything that Alan Moore put on the page and did it. You
Hmm.
know, um, impeccable. It makes me sad that they didn't work together again after that because Moore and the companies he tend to work with have a bad habit of falling out because he thinks his creator rights isn't being respected, which you know, fair
Mm.
enough. But
Hmm.
and to be fair, DC didn't treat him that well, so.
Mm.
Yeah,
Gotcha,
they
gotcha.
kind of screwed him out of the rights for like Watchmen. So yeah,
Mm.
you know, but it's a fantastic book, and yeah, the movie also introduced me to the book, and it's a pretty solid adaptation for the most part.
Mhm.
I have some quibbles, like I don't appreciate how they made Rorschach more like conventionally heroic because he's not.
Hmm. Mm. I can see
Um,
that.
like they I don't know. They made him more like this like Avenger, you know, who like
Mhm.
who'll do the
Mhm.
right thing when basically did like if Frank Miller did Rorschach
Yeah.
and just did it
Yeah.
unironically, you know,
Mhm.
instead of what Moore's going like, this is what this person might be like if, you know, he were real.
Yeah.
Um but it's a solid adaptation. Casting is phenomenal in that movie. I
Mhm.
mean, whoever did the casting, throw all the money at that guy or girl because
Yes.
they
Yes.
freaking nailed it.
I
Like
agree, definitely.
you know, like I hear Jackie Earl Haley's voice when I read
Mhm.
Rorschach, though.
Mhm.
I often again kind of go back to the comics. In the comic, he's described as having like a very monotone voice, but you
Mm.
know, I digress.
Yeah, I getcha, and I think part of that comes from, you
Jeffrey
look
Dean
at
Morgan
Zack.
is who I hear when I hear the comedian.
Yes.
He freaking nailed it as the
Oh, yeah,
comedian.
perfect, and I think some of that with Rorschach comes from, if you look at Zack Snyder's other movies, he tends to really gravitate towards the grizzled, more anti-hero kind of character, so
Yeah,
it makes sense that he would really focus on Rorschach in particular as, like, because I was even looking at that on HBO Max, like, the
and
description
and
for.
and you could argue that like he oh damn it, I just forgot what I was saying. Finish your point, and maybe I'll
Oh, it's
remember
all
it
good.
again.
The description on HBO Max for the Watchmen movie, it describes it as Rorschach discovers a murder and investigates a plot against superheroes. So it even the description of the movie
Yeah,
frames
Oh, yeah, now
Rorschach
I
as
remember
the
what I was gonna say.
protagonist.
Because, like, if you think about it, Rorschach kind of is the protagonist of the story. Like, he's the one who we
Yeah.
get, like, he's the one who sets everything in motion, kind of like he's
Mhm.
investigating the comedian's death. So I think it would be fair to call him the protagonist of the story. I won't argue too
Mhm.
much with that, but, like, saying, like, he's a hero,
It's
he's
definitely
my
some
favorite character of
gray
the
area
story,
there.
and I'll say he's not a hero. Very dark
Mhm. Mhm.
anti-hero at best.
Definitely. Yeah, and I mean that's part of what makes the story so great in the comic is all of the characters are deeply flawed in
Mhm.
some form or fashion. Obviously some to more extent than others, but
Yeah.
they are all broken people, which makes it very interesting to kind of delve into their each of their psyches.
Yeah, they're deeply flawed at best and just absolutely monstrous at their worst.
Right, exactly.
And there's even things in the movie. I mean, much as I love the book and think it's kind of like the holy bible of comic bookdom, there's some things
Yeah.
I kind of like what they did. Like, I like that
Hmm.
Dan was more torn up in the movie about
Yeah.
Rorschach's death. I like uh, what else? I really love the intro to the movie because, like,
Yeah,
that
that's
is
really
just
good.
a brilliant, might be the best thing Snyder's ever done. Which,
Mm.
quote me here, guys. I generally don't like Snyder's movies, but, like, that might be the best thing he's done. Just like
Mm.
just a perfect setting up the world without doing any, without any exposition.
Yeah. Yeah, that really like the intro, like you said. I also personally, and this may be my hot take, I like the ending of the movie better with the framing Dr. Manhattan spoilers, framing
Hmm.
Dr. Manhattan instead of doing the giant alien squid thing that the comic does.
Yeah, I did too, but then I thought about it. I'm like, why would you go to war against Dr. Manhattan? Like, you can't do anything to him.
That's
Like,
how do you beat him? Yeah,
yeah, like, that's
yeah, no, that
stupid.
makes sense.
But I digress. I mean, superhero comics are kind of silly in general, so I mean, it's
Hmm.
part of the
Hmm.
bag. But nonetheless, yeah, no, I know a couple people who are like that. I'm like, yeah, it's okay, yeah. But
Yeah.
I mean, again, but yeah, everyone's cast really well in that movie. I really like Patrick Wilson as well as Night Owl. He
Hmm.
really, and I like they didn't make him as schlubby in the movie. Like, he's kind of a sad sack in the
Yeah.
book. In the movie, like, sure, he's a little bit like that too, but, like, he is a bit more like, like he was a superhero for a reason.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Definitely. You can definitely see that. And I'm curious, you said Alan Moore is probably your favorite
Hmm.
comic book writer. Who are some of your other favorites?
Um, I like a lot of the British guys who came after Moore, like Neil Gaiman. I really like.
Mm. Mm.
You know, I won't go into the controversy he's been under recently because I said my piece about that. But
Sure.
some of his he wrote my favorite fantasy novel of all time. So
Mm.
thanks, buddy. But anyway, Warren Ellis is really good. Um, Garth Ennis.
Mm.
I know you're a Christian, and I've always been curious to let one of my Christian friends read his series Preacher because it's very critical of, like, religion, Christianity in
Mm.
particular.
Hmm.
So that would be
Gotcha.
fun.
Gotcha.
That would be fun to do someday. But, like, you have to be like, I always say this: it takes a particular kind of animal to appreciate what Garth Ennis can do. But I won't go into
Certainly.
that.
Certainly.
Um, Robert Kirkman was, aside
Mm.
from Alan Moore, probably the first comic writer I really followed. He did Invincible, which was turned into a show, which is really good.
Right. Right.
He did The Walking Dead.
Hmm.
He's great. I really enjoy his stuff a lot. Brian K. Vaughan is really good. He did Saga, which is probably my favorite ongoing comic going on right now. So
Okay.
it's really quite good. Um, there's probably a few others I'm missing, but, like, those are, like, the main ones. Oh, Jeff Lemire as well.
Jeff Lemire. Okay, gotcha.
I'm actually doing a series on my channel right now covering some of his comics, so you can see some of my reviews on there if you want.
Gotcha.
Point that way. But yeah, I mean that's kind of the main ones I really like in terms of like
Gotcha.
writers I follow religiously. Um, yeah, no, it's good.
Yeah, that's good to know. Because I've enjoyed going through what I have so far, but that definitely gives me some stuff to work with in terms of people to explore. So
Yeah, I mean I do like Frank Miller. I guess since I'll just get this out of the way. A lot of people think I don't like Frank Miller because I can be very critical of his work.
mhm,
That does not mean I hate him. I do not hate Frank Miller. I don't have
certainly,
what he does exceptionally well. Like get him on Daredevil, I will show you some greatness. Like
yeah, yeah.
get him on Batman, I will show you some greatness that ended up completely rotting and turning into complete crap. But I digress. Um, I mean, Batman Year One is one of my favorite Batman comics of all time. So, you know, but like some of his other stuff, like I find he's one of those guys. Get him a good editor to rein him in, to be like to
Mm,
tell him no, and he
mhm.
tends to do his best work. When you let him run free, you get holy terror.
It's it's funny how many writers, directors, artists, people are like that, where some of their best work, you actually
Is when
do
you
some
rein him
digging.
in.
Yeah, when you rein them in, because uh, I mean, we already talked about Frank Miller, so might as well go this route too. I feel the same way about George Lucas, where I
Yeah,
think he
yeah.
did
That's
most of
that's a
his
good
best
example
work,
actually. Yeah.
where he had other writers and other people to help him hone in his vision. And then when you just let him free with no restrictions, y- you started running into some issues.
Yeah, like there's brilliance there, but there's a lot of crap.
Right,
I saw you.
exactly.
I saw you did a video on Alien 3, which I
Mm,
think you described it quite well. You called it a beautiful mess.
yeah.
Because I remember feeling the same way when I saw it. I'm like, God, this is so frustrating. There's a really good movie in there, but
Yes.
there's too much crap in there too. I've
Yeah,
heard the director's cut's better, but I don't know.
it
I
is.
haven't bothered to watch it.
Yeah, the assembly cut is a lot better. I think the biggest reason for that is because it gives better characterization and kind of fleshes out some of the themes of the story a bit better. But yeah, like you said, I mean, I don't know if you've heard this story, but they invited all the original Alien movie directors back to do director's commentaries for the Blu ray release.
Mhm.
And David Fincher, who directed Alien 3, was the only one who said no. I'm not doing a commentary
Yeah,
because he's
if I
still,
recall right, he disowned the film.
yep, he's disowned the film and he is still very salty at Fox for they were literally handing him script pages as he was filming the movie. That's how ramshackle the
Oh,
production of it was, is they were writing the movie as they were filming the movie.
yeah, I know William Gibson did a version of it, which a
Right.
lot of people really like. I haven't read it
Mhm.
yet, but I know a lot of people really like that script.
Mhm. Yeah, it was interesting. I listened to the audiobook version of it. It was good, but I think I like David Fincher's version better simply because there's kind of more meat there, there's more themes, there's kind of more stuff going on, whereas William Gibson's version is much more of a conventional sequel, if that makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
of it does kind of feel like an Aliens 2.0 in a lot of ways.
Mm.
Whereas Alien 3, love it or hate it, it is very much its own animal. It is very much different from both Alien and Aliens.
Oh yeah, I mean which is kind of funny because he went on to make is my favorite of his movies, which is Seven.
Mm.
Absolutely love that film. Which gives me some ribbing from some friends of mine because like, it's too 90s. I'm like, but the themes, man, the themes, they're
Yeah,
universal. I won't go into
yeah.
that, but yeah, I'm one of those who thinks Fight Club. I'm just tired of Fight Club. Do I want to go in that rabbit hole today? No, I don't.
That's fair.
I'll just
No,
go
that
into
makes
this way. I
sense.
think it's a bit overrated, is all I'll say. I'll
Gotcha.
just quit it
Gotcha.
there before I
I
start
I have no
ranting.
real I have no real opinion on that movie because I have not seen that movie. So you can just drop that hot take and leave it there.
Oh, sir, that's one of the like dude bro films of all time.
I know.
Gotta
I
watch that at some point, man.
yep. That's another one on the list.
Um, yeah, I'm tempted. But I'm gonna hold back from getting mad at Fight Club.
But
Um,
yeah, I had been going through the Alien movies on my channel just because I really like them. I think it's a fun franchise. I'm a big sci-fi nerd if you couldn't tell already from
sure, yeah.
my content. And so I'm still working on I'm going to go through the Predator movies as well. So,
Oh,
and then
I have a
kind of
buddy who
combine those.
really
So,
loves the second one. Just like,
I've heard it's good. I haven't watched it yet,
it's
but
fun, but it's a fun movie, but it's really cheesy. It's basically like, what if the
mm.
Lethal Weapon people did Predator?
Gotcha, gotcha.
Um, yeah, I like the first one. The other ones are just kind of like, yeah, okay. I think Predators that came out like a decade ago. I thought that was a
Mhm,
fun movie because I actually tried to do something different.
mm,
But I digress.
getcha.
Um, my another hot movie take. I think Aliens better than Aliens.
Alien is better than Aliens?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm with you on that one. I
Thank
I
you.
I
I'm
would
so glad I'm
agree.
not alone on that because don't get me
'Cau
wrong, Aliens, fantastic movie.
oh, yeah.
I'm not gonna take that from James Cameron. Um, there's just something about the first one. I don't know what it is. I feel the same way,
Yeah.
funnily enough, about Terminator. Terminator
Mm,
2, one of the greatest action films of all time, but there's something about that first one I just love more.
yeah. And I would agree that I like Alien better, and that's funny because I normally don't really like horror movies. I have a hard time getting into a lot of horror movies, but Alien is one of those that just really works for me, and I think it's just so perfectly constructed. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's part of the reason I like it so much is there's no fluff on it. It's just like hits that perfect sweet spot of just enough, but never overstays its welcome.
Yeah, I mean, it's in my top 5 horror movies of all time.
Mm,
So I mean, there you go. But it's one of my favorite monster movies too, because
mm,
the Thing edges it out a little bit because I think the
mm,
Thing is far more terrifying, but
mm.
Alien is really well done. One of the best films ever made, as far as I'm
Certainly,
concerned.
certainly.
Which a lot of people will agree, thankfully. But there's people who like Aliens more, and God bless them. I just like the first one more.
Yeah, the second one, Aliens, is definitely more of a crowd pleaser because
Hmm.
it's more action oriented, of course. And I think maybe that's why people like it more, is because it's more of an action movie with horror elements, whereas the
Sure,
first one is
yeah.
just a straight up horror movie.
Yeah, no, and there's also like the weird like sexual subtext that I thought was really fascinating.
Mm. Yeah, there's some really interesting stuff if you read the behind the scenes of like the development of the movie. It gets into some weird territory, but it is also very interesting.
Yeah, especially when you get into like H.R. Giger, who's the guy who
Oh
designed
gosh, yeah.
all the weird architecture and who designed the creature, as a matter of
Uh-huh.
fact. Um, yeah, no, it's an interesting story. And also, if I recall right, I think Mobius, the guy I mentioned earlier, also helped in that movie. I think he made the spacesuits that they end up wearing.
Gotcha. Is that the name? I'm not familiar with Mobius. Is that the name of the artist?
Yes, he's a comic book artist.
Oh.
He also did a lot of film work, so Star Wars was very inspired by him.
Hmm.
Blade Runner takes a lot from owes a significant debt to him. The Fifth Element is basically here's if they did a Mobius movie.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Um, yeah, for my money, one of the greatest comic artists of all time. But anyway, I won't get into that too much. But I still need to read The Inkle from him and Alejandro Jodorowsky because I know a lot of people love that one.
Gotcha.
But yeah, no. Going back to Alien though, yeah, I still like the first movie more. What can I say?
Yeah.
And then there's I mean, have you made an Alien Resurrection movie yet, or one yet? Because that movie's
I did.
freaking riot.
Yeah, that movie.
So
Oh my
hilariously
God.
bad.
Yes, so many people. It's funny because I got a lot of people in the comments defending that movie, and I'm like, I'm sorry, guys, but going from Alien to Alien Resurrection, it's like this is like
That's a journey.
yes, exactly. It's like Alien Resurrection is like the Sci-Fi Channel original version of Alien.
That's a great way of putting it.
It feels like a B movie. It doesn't feel like how masterfully executed Alien and Aliens were. And again, I'd still defend Alien 3 because even as flawed as it is, you can still see the director's voice really shine through in that movie. Whereas Alien Resurrection, it's just like a fever dream to me.
My favorite part of the movie is when the guy has the chest burster come out and he like attacks the
Oh
scientist.
yeah.
I'm like, this is glorious.
it's definitely memorable. I will give it that. Is that Alien
and then they
Resurrection
just start
is
shooting
not
him,
a
and Ron
forgettable
Perlman
movie.
is just yelling like a maniac. You're just like, what is this film?
Yeah.
What is this? Who wrote this?
It's so weird. Well, funny you should say that. Joss Whedon of all people wrote
Joss
it.
Whedon did, but
Which is funny because I even said in my video, well, if we didn't get Alien Resurrection, then we may have not have gotten Firefly. So I'll give him a pass on that one because it does kind of feel like a prototype to Firefly with like the crew and their dynamic and all of that.
You had a buddy who says he kind of is easier on Alien Resurrection for that reason, and I'm like, that's beautiful. I still think it's a stupid ass movie. So
yeah.
Sorry, man.
No, I can definitely see people liking it as like a so bad it's good, or as just like a goofy dumb sci-fi movie. But
or the creature that is birthed from the alien.
Oh gosh,
that is one of the
newborn.
weirdest freaking things I've ever seen. I'm like, what is this? Like, who thought of that?
It's
Joss Whedon, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just kind of gross and weird. It's not scary. It's not really cool. It's just kind of this gross, weird thing.
Kind of funny, but it's really just gross and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've watched Chris Stuckman, but I think he put it the best. He said it looks like a shriveled penis with eyeballs, which just, I'm like, that's great. I gotta chuck all the money at Chris Stuckman after that.
Yeah, it's pretty gross looking. It's pretty bad.
Oh man, it's oh god.
But yeah, it's been fun to go through those movies. I've yet to go into making videos on the prequels.
I was gonna say, be honest, there's the newer film that came out, Romulus. I actually think did what Alien Resurrection was trying to do. It did it a lot better. I
agree. I completely agree.
Alien Resurrection kind of plays with that whole like genetic experimentation. I'm just like, oh, that could have been cool if someone else had done it, And then in that movie, they like do it, and I think in a far more interesting, better way.
Oh yeah, I remember. I won't spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen the movie, but I remember in the theater when that final creature appeared. The entire theater like collectively gasped. Like all of us were like, "What the heck? What is that thing?" It was so viscerally like, ugh, just eerie.
The uncanny valley, as people like to say.
Yes, exactly.
Oh man, oh god.
Which is funny because as much as I like the Alien movies, I tried to play Dead Space not that long ago for the first time.
Oh yeah,
and I got too creeped out. I couldn't do it. I think there's something about the video game format that
Well, yeah,
it
you're
just gets
interacting
me
with it.
more.
You're not just watching it on your screen, you know.
Exactly. It just there's a bit more of a visceral terror there when you are actually the character playing the game.
Yeah, no, it's I haven't played Dead Space too much. I played it once at a friend of mine's house, and I mean it was fun. Though I was basically like, this is basically just an alien game.
Yeah.
They literally call it, if I recall right, they literally call it a necromorph. I'm like, come on, guys,
Yes.
just make a alien game.
The tech is also all very similar to
Exact
the Alien
design,
universe.
the atmosphere. It like, bro, it's an alien game. Basically, the best alien game that they did make, actually, because it is a good game. I remember liking
Mhm.
it a lot. Yeah. No, I enjoy the Alien movies to a fault. The first one's probably still my favorite.
Yeah. No, I get you. I would probably still count the first as my favorite. It's hard to beat the OG.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not me just being like nostalgic. I'm like, I watched it again a few years ago. I'm like, this is really well constructed, guys.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
pat yourselves on the back, guys. You done good. Like, it still looks
Exactly.
great years later. You know,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
it's like the sets they use. I'm like, oh my god, how did they do that?
Right. Which fun fact, you may already know this, but for some of the scenes where they're in the spacesuits, they
Hmm.
actually used child actors to make the sets look bigger and more imposing because they didn't have
Interesting.
the budget to build the sets bigger. So they used child actors in the spacesuits to make the sets appear larger than they actually were.
Interesting. I actually did not know that. I know some of the other like facts. Like I remember the iconic chest burster scene when it burst out. Like it genuinely
Mhm.
like spooked everyone.
Yep, yep.
Like when the
That they
lady
knew something
screams, like
was
that was
coming.
genuine.
Right, right.
Um, or what else? One of my favorite little details. You know the scene when Ash talks to them when they figure out what he is. And the
Mhm.
little and when she punches it, I love the like little derpy smile.
Yeah,
Ridley
yeah, where it
Scott
switches
infamously
back to
hated
the
it. He thought it looked stupid, and it kind of does, but I think it's funny. It's
yeah.
it's so like, ugh. And he's like, oh, he's like, I remember in like a commentary I watched, and he's just like, I fucking hate that head.
Which is so funny. It's kind of hard to get away from at least a little bit of corniness
Well,
in
sure,
something like
yeah.
that.
It's. I actually watched the movie that the guys who did Alien, because John Carpenter worked with the guy who wrote Alien to make this movie called Dark Star, which is like a sci-fi comedy.
Mm,
Oh, it's
mhm.
goofy as hell.
Yeah.
It is very campy. Like there's a scene with a beach ball, and the alien is literally a beach ball with like feet under it, with like flip
Oh
flops,
gosh.
and like and it like jumps up on the guy and just starts smacking him with a. It's really, oh man, and like it's meant to be funny, to be fair, but it's like it's just like, oh my god, man, like that's.
Yeah, that's certainly a tone you can go for.
Yeah, I remember being like, it's fine. There's some funny moments in there. Um, and then those two would go on to make two of the greatest horror movies of all time. So what do you know? We all start somewhere, I guess.
That's right. Never give up.
Yeah, I also noticed you watched the Electric Slate movie, which I know a
Oh
lot,
yeah.
or Electric State. Sorry, not Slate. I hear that was a really bad movie.
It was, yeah. Especially now having read the graphic novel it's based on and then
Mm-hmm.
watching the movie. Oh my gosh, it is night and day, the difference in tone, the difference in presentation, the quality of the writing. The graphic novel is really solid. It is really solid, and then the movie just takes the novel and tries to turn it into this like Ready Player One
Oh Lord.
nostalgia bait action movie, which is as far from the original graphic novel as you can get. Because the original novel is all atmospheric, it is dark, it is somber and slow, and then they just completely chucked that out the window for the movie.
I've seen like I've seen that book at my local bookshop, and I've thought about picking it up, but I'm like, what is it? Is it like a comic? Is it like a weird photo album or something? Like, what
It's
is it?
interesting. I think the best way to describe it is I said graphic novel, but even that isn't entirely accurate because there's not like typically with graphic novels where it's more of a comic book where you have dialogue bubbles and things like that. It's more of I think an illustrated book would be the best way to describe it.
Interesting.
That it reads like a novella. It's very short, but then it has pictures as reference to what's going on. But it's not a kid's book.
Yeah, I
It's
remember being
definitely not a
intrigued by
kid's
like the
book.
design of it because
Mhm.
it looked interesting, but I haven't read it because I'm like, what is this? Like, what
Yeah,
is
it's
it?
interesting. If you look online, people will describe it different ways. Some people will call it a graphic novel. Some people will call it an illustrated novel. I've heard other people call it an art book with a story. It's kind of hard to pin down into. It's kind of if that gives a description as to what exactly it is. It is a story, but it does have the illustrations are an important part of it.
Interesting, interesting.
But
Uh,
yeah, I'd recommend it. I would recommend the book. The movie, nah, you can easily skip.
oh, I see you also like 300 from Frank Miller. I like it.
Mhm.
I do think it has some of the like goofier aspects of his work. Like he just really loves that like super manly, like
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
The frat bro in me really enjoys that kind of tone and
That,
artwork. So
fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, I'll give you that. I'll give you that. Oh man, but yeah, no, it's fun. I'll see you've covered some Lovecraft. That's interesting. It must be
yeah,
interesting. I was actually talking with my friend Dustin, who does preacher reads on YouTube, and he's a big like cosmic horror guy, and he's like he's a preacher, hence the name.
uh,
Um, and I asked him, I'm like, what intrigues you about cosmic horror? Because like cosmic horror and Christianity are very like different like ideas in general,
mhm,
And he kind of explained it was really interesting. So I mean, I'm not saying you can't be a Christian and do cosmic horror, like you definitely can,
mhm.
but I find it interesting because I don't know, it's like the Christian belief and what cosmic horror posits about the world are just like very very different from each other.
Certainly, certainly. I think that's part of the reason, and obviously, this is just my opinion, but I guess what appeals to me about it is very much exploring man in an existential crisis. And,
Mm,
obviously in existentialism, you can go one of two routes. And, obviously in the Christian route, we believe that God is benevolent and that he desires for all to be saved and that he is loving. Or you can go the other route of the universe is either cold and indifferent to your existence or it is actively trying to kill you. And so it's just kind of interesting from a philosophical angle to kind of posit in that direction as well.
yeah, I have a weird relationship with cosmic horror because I'm really fascinated by it, but at the same time, I fundamentally disagree with its premise. If
Sure.
that makes sense at all, it's kind of like
Hmm.
reading Garth Ennis's work in a
Mm.
way. Like
Gotcha.
I dig it, but I disagree with like half of what you're saying vehemently at times.
I but to me that's one of the most fascinating things and fun things that has been about doing YouTube is even when I read an author or watch a movie by someone if I disagree with them philosophically, but the artistry of what they present is
Mm-hmm.
still something that speaks to me. To me, that's a really good sign of a good artist. If you can
Mm.
get someone who disagrees with your philosophy to still appreciate what you accomplished, I think that's a sign of a very talented writer.
Oh, sure, yeah, for certain. That's always a good thing. It's I I don't know if I'd say I like H.P. Lovecraft's work in general. I made a video about it last October where I talked with a friend of mine who is a big Lovecraft fan, and we kind of talked out, what we think about it and our differing thoughts on it. Another one of those like his ideas, like the Cthulhu mythos is really fascinating to me. The problem is I don't really like his actual writing all that much.
That's fair.
And
No,
also,
he
and again,
yeah.
also there's that just the way he sees the world and how I see the world is just fundamentally different.
I've heard very few people who go to H.P. Lovecraft for his prose. His prose is very simple. It's more of the ideas that he plays with that are
I was gonna say
interesting.
it's overtly flowery, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that.
But I mean, there's a couple of his stories I like The Color Out of Space. I really enjoy. I
Mm,
think that's a
that's a
fun
good
one.
one.
What else? Like
Yeah, I'm trying
Cool
to think.
Air. I really like. I think that's just a fun
Oh yeah.
idea.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple others I could probably name, but those are the first two that kind of popped to my mind.
Gotcha.
Also, the
Gotcha.
Dunwich Horror is a fun one. I enjoyed that one,
That's
even though it
probably
does have
my
some of the Lovecraft isms I dislike.
sure. Yeah, Dunwich Horror is probably my personal favorite of his stories. I just really like the climax and conclusion of that story is really good to me.
Yeah, I mean, I like just some of his more popular stories, like Shadow over Innsmouth. Don't like it.
Mm,
Call of Cthulhu. Fun ideas in there. Don't like it very much as like a story.
yeah.
Um, In the Mountains of Madness. Don't like it. I don't think it's a very good story. Like they're literally just standing around and looking at what are those called, hieroglyphs the whole time. I'm just like, and then
Yeah.
there's like some weird like Shoggoth eldritch beings running around. I'm just like, okay, buddy. That's nice. Like, I think Lovecraft's problem is that like he generally goes like, "Ooh, spooky! Look at all the weird, unknowable stuff over there," and I'm like, "That's beautiful. I don't get why I should be scared here." Which maybe that's
Yeah,
because of my age and when I grew up in,
sure.
but
No, that
at the
makes
same
sense.
time, I'm just like, this is just silly at times. Like he
No, I
gets real
getcha.
overwrought with the horror, if that makes sense. Which because
Right.
like horror is a skill, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I digress. I mean, I think there's been some great cosmic horror that's come out. Like I really like. I think that Jeff Vandermeer's Southern Reach books are really good examples of cosmic horror.
Yeah.
Yet done in a
I
very modern
mm,
way, I think that people can appreciate.
gotcha. Okay. I'll have to add that to my list of all the other things I already have on my
Also,
TBR,
don't
but
watch the
whatever.
movie before you read the book Annihilation because they're very different aside from the core concept.
Oh, really?
Hmm.
That's good to know.
It's kind of like The Shining or
Mm,
Stalker, if you've ever seen Stalker.
okay. Gotcha. I do get the Shining comparison, so.
Okay, good. It's I don't consider the Annihilation movie a straight adaptation. It is another version of the story, is what I like to
Gotcha.
say.
Mm, good to
Um,
know.
but I really like those books. Authority in particular. I actually think Authority is better than Annihilation. Don't
Mm.
assassinate me, Vandermeer fans. Though I have also talked about those books with the same guy I talked about with H.P. Lovecraft, so it was a fun time.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, no, um, it's a really good book, I think.
Mm. Mm.
Um, well, it's a good trilogy, I should say. And I mean, it
Gotcha.
is a good book, but the trilogy's good. I did get the fourth book, Absolution, which I thought was just okay. You don't have to read that if you don't want to.
No, I would definitely want to check out his stuff. Uh there's obviously a lot on my TBR, but I'm very preferential to sci-fi in general, so.
For my money, he is the best one working today.
Mm.
So there you go on that. I'm sure some people will quibble.
Ah,
But I think Vandermeer's the best. Like, he's the one
gotcha.
who's most affected me. I still need to read, because I am very picky about science fiction and all that. I would say I'm a bit of an aficionado, if you will.
Gotcha.
So I don't like like Ready Player One. I don't think is very good science fiction for one hand. Um, Michael Crichton, solid science fiction, but kind of gets old once you figure out, kind of what his shtick is, which is basically, hey, what
Mm,
if this thing but goes wrong?
mm, mm.
Though
Certainly.
I still think the Andromeda Strain is a really good book though. So, and
Gotcha.
Jurassic Park's pretty good too. The book,
Oh yeah.
though it's much
Yeah.
different from the movie. You'll be like, God, why is Hammond such a dick in this? Um,
Yeah, no, I definitely want to get to Crichton, and I would say some of my
Yeah, he does what I
favorite.
call
Yeah,
popcorn science fiction is what I like to
yeah,
call it.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like fun, thoughtful sometimes. Like Andromeda Strain, I think is a very solid piece of science fiction. But generally meant to entertain more than anything else, which is fine. I mean, but I don't know. I like science fiction that can like deeply penetrate and make me think
Yeah,
and feel
certainly.
if possible.
No, definitely. It's always the best of both worlds when you're able to have a really cool premise or concept, but then also have characters or some kind of heart behind it, some emotional core that carries you through it as well.
Yeah, I mean, like if like my top science fiction writers, Ray Bradbury,
Mm,
Philip K. Dick,
mm-hmm.
and H.G. Wells. As far as I'm concerned, those three
Gotcha.
guys are. I like Heinlein as well. I think Heinlein is misunderstood, but he's one of those kind
I
of like Philip
agree.
K. Dick where you gotta read him in stages.
Mm-hmm.
It's very important you know the date before you read his stuff.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I know you're a big sci-fi guy as well, so I hope you're following with what I'm saying.
Definitely.
Because
No,
sometimes I can go on my nerd spiel and people will be like, "What are you talking about?"
you're
Or
good.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right, right. Yeah, because I'm also a big Bradbury and Heinlein, especially, and H.G. Wells too. Been getting into a
Yeah, that
little
stuff's good,
of
man.
that.
Like some of
Yeah,
that
it
stuff is,
holds up.
yeah. Like I have some friends who are also sci-fi nerds. I'm like, man, I can't do the Invisible Man. I'm like, that's too bad. I think it's great.
Yeah, no, those classics are good. They're
The Time
classics for a
Machine. Like I had
reason.
somebody who said they didn't like the Time Machine, and I was so hurt. Like
Oh,
that was like a childhood favorite for me.
right,
And
right.
that's another one I still think holds up very well.
Hmm.
Still, I mean, some of the science is outdated, and you could argue it's kind of a fantasy, but I think it still holds up. Just in terms of like the social commentary and what happens.
Totally. Yeah, no, I agree, and
War of the Worlds, I don't really like that much. Just feels like a news report.
I mean, that's basically what it is for most of it, so much so that everybody got freaked out when they did the
Yeah,
Orson Welles broadcast
yeah,
that
Orson Welles.
went awry.
That's a story that has fascinated me over the years. That's one I would yeah, that's one where everyone got spooked and it was like, oh no, it was a radio drama. Sorry guys.
Right.
No, but I still need to read The Island of Dr. Moreau. That's one I still need to get to before I
Hmm.
leave this mortal realm. As my,
Sure.
my friend Shay put it, cut my line from this tether. but yeah, no, I really like science fiction a lot. Which I think my love for it and like my like real like nerd stuff about it is kind of ruined it in a weird way because like it's really
Hmm.
hard for me to just sit down and like be like, okay, is this good? And then like it's really hard for me to pick out like one I'll be interested in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Whenever I've found this for myself, the more you read, the more picky you become. But on the one hand, I do think that is you kind of developing your literary taste of
Mm-hmm.
you start to discover these are the kinds of stories that I gravitate to versus the ones that you don't. So, and that's something I've found personally with doing YouTube is not putting too much pressure on myself to be reading the same things that everyone else is, because everyone's got their own niche, everybody's got their own genre they gravitate towards, and if yours is different from the
I'm like,
mainstream,
sci-fi is the one for me.
yeah, exactly. Then might as well just go all in on it.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, no, science fiction is kind of that genre for me where I feel very passionate about it. I even have a show about it. That's how much because like,
Nice.
I feel like not everyone talks about science fiction so much.
Gotcha.
And if they do, like it's like Whitney over at Secret Sauce's Storycraft, who runs a really great channel, or
Yeah, she
SFF
is good.
180, who also runs a great channel. Like, there's very rarely people who like take science fiction seriously. It's mostly like fantasy, which is fine. I love fantasy too,
Mhm.
but so I started a show where I have people on, and I won't say too much because maybe I'll get you once because you like science fiction quite a bit. So
Sure, yeah. That could be fun.
yeah, but yeah, no, I like science fiction quite a bit, but it's also frustrating because I get real picky about what science fiction I read.
Definitely.
Because like
No,
it
I
seems
get
really
that.
popular now to do what again I like to call like the popcorn science fiction, where it's like
Mhm.
it, I hate to sound super pretentious here. I'm probably gonna sound really pretentious here, but like it seems like they're more interested in spectacle than like anything else.
Sure.
Which I'm like,
No, I get
that's
you.
not the core of what science fiction is, though.
Yeah, that's why cuz I got a little bit of pushback from that, is cuz I don't really gravitate towards John Scalzi would be the one for me, that he's really popular, but his kind of writing style just kind of bounces off of me.
Yeah, I've wanted to try him for a while, but I'm kind of like, I don't know.
Definitely give him a shot. And to be fair, I've only read one of his books all the way through, which was Old Man's War, his
Yeah,
probably his most
I've
famous
heard that
book.
one's like his best one, which I don't know.
It wasn't bad. I will say that. I wasn't like cringing or groaning while reading it, but I think the problem was is like when you read Heinlein and when you read Joe Haldeman as well, it's kind of hard to compare any other military sci-fi up against that. It's
Yeah, or Starship Troopers,
yeah, exactly.
which another
Yep.
one where like my god, the movie and book are very different.
Yes, definitely. My Starship Troopers review actually of the book is the second most viewed video on my channel right now, and I've been sitting on doing a review of the movie at some point, but I've honestly been a little intimidated by it just because there's a lot of different angles that you could come at the movie at, as an adaptation, as a film in itself.
It's a
Like,
solid movie, but a very piss
yeah.
poor adaptation
Oh
of
yeah.
and intentionally so. It's not like,
Yes, exactly.
which, that's where I can show some grace because it's like they're not trying to do the book right. They're just like, here's a version of it.
Yeah.
And it's Paul Verhoeven who is surprisingly very good at making cheesy action films with substance.
Mhm.
I don't know how he does it.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, because I like RoboCop, I like Total Recall, and I like Starship Troopers too. I think they're a fun, like, unofficial trilogy, if you will,
If you
of
like a
sci-fi.
RoboCop, another comic recommendation if you want to write it down or something. 2000
Mm,
AD, um, Judge Dredd in particular, because that's where RoboCop comes from.
gotcha.
It's also where a lot of the guys like Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman and Grant
Mm,
Morrison, a lot of those guys, that's where they came from. Was 2000 AD.
gotcha. That's the name of the series, is
That's the name of
2000
the
AD?
like company. So kind of like how Marvel and
Oh,
DC
okay.
in America,
Gotcha.
that's the big thing over in the UK.
2000 AD. Gotcha.
Um,
Yeah, because I've seen I've seen the Dread movie with Carl Urban, which I
it's
really
very
liked.
good. It's
I
very
thought was
good.
very good. I haven't seen the Sylvester Stallone one, though I do want to watch it.
It's goofy, and also they commit the cardinal sin, which is he takes his freaking mask off. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
you do not take the mask off if you're a Judge Dredd.
yeah.
And it sucks, too, because Stallone looks like he just walked right out of the comic, so there you go.
I think the rule is if you are Dredd, Master Chief, or the Mandalorian, you don't take your helmet off.
Exactly. Yeah.
Unless you have a very
But
good
for the
reason.
Mandalorian, like it actually works because it
Yeah,
like because when he takes his mask off, you're like, holy shit, this is like a big moment,
right, exactly.
because
Yep, it
it's not like
ties in.
Master Chief or Dread where it's like he never takes it off,
Mhm.
like you know.
But I'm always down for a cheesy 90s action movie, so I'll watch Judge Dredd. I'm sure I'll enjoy it, even if I conclude it is not a great movie.
Oh, I mean, it's pretty. There's some delightfully hammy acting from
Oh
Stallone
yeah.
and the villain of the movie is
Oh
very
yeah.
fun. So I think you'll enjoy that. Does not capture the tone of Dread at all, though.
Yeah. The new movie. I say new, it's like 2012 or whatever, but
Sucks they didn't
the
make more movies. That was a good
I
one.
know, it's sad that that's the latest one, and Carl Urban has I researched, he talked about in interviews, is like, "Yeah, if they called me back to play the character, I would totally do it in whatever capacity." So,
Yeah, I mean it's a really it's a very underrated movie, I think. Um,
mhm.
and it also captures the tone of the comics very well, even though like the world of Mega City, like it's weird. My comic book guys actually put it really nicely. Like if they had just put Carl Urban into the '90s movie, it would have been the
Mm,
comic, just straight up,
gotcha.
you know. But
That makes
I
sense.
digress. And I wouldn't say I'm like the biggest 2080 fan. Like Dread is the only one I'm really familiar with. There are some. I
Gotcha.
need to catch up on 2000 AD because I want to see what crazy shenanigans they got up to up there. Um, it's very angry too, so you have to be in like a certain mood to read
Certainly.
2000 AD and Dread in particular.
Mhm.
Very good series though. There's some good stuff there. So yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Judge Dredd is kind of like what Batman is to like a lot of Americans. Well,
Mm.
they like superhero comics in the UK, at least some of them.
Uh-huh.
Unless you're
Uh-huh.
like the 2000 AD guys, some of them don't like
Sure.
superheroes.
Sure.
um, yeah, it's interesting. Again, I don't want to go too hardcore into the comic nerddom. I don't want to overwhelm you.
Oh, you're good. It definitely gives me some good material to work with and some good recommendations.
Um, oh what? Oh yeah, we were talking about science fiction, but yeah, I'm real like a friend of mine, my friend Joe Byrne, who writes the Hybrid Helix books, he's like, "You like something that's striking," and I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I do."
Mhm.
I'm not content with the same old. Sometimes, anyway.
Definitely.
Now there are, there are some like traditionally, stuff that I like. I'm not saying that, but I find the most special to me is the ones that kind of do something different with it.
Definitely. No, I agree. It's always fun when you have a novel concept that you can just take to its furthest extreme. I think that's what a lot of the best sci-fi does, is it just hones in on one particular idea or concept and just explores that as best as you can.
You know, pretty much, yeah. If AI is involved in it, I'll probably read it because I like AI stuff.
Yeah, that there's a lot of good stories that revolve around that, and obviously becoming more increasingly relevant the
Yeah,
further real world AI continues to develop.
though my quibble is it technically isn't intelligence because it's not sentient, at least not yet.
Yeah,
When it becomes
yes.
sentient, that will be a very scary day, I think.
Yes, I remember there was a news story that everybody was joking about because James Cameron joined the board of an AI company, and everyone was like, "Dude, did you not watch your own movie? Like, this is how Skynet happens."
I like that. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Um, no, I'm not a like I'm of the mind like I am not thinking it'll inherently be a bad thing, but I do think we need to be really careful with it because we
Certainly.
have all these sci-fi books and movies talking about how if we use this wrong, we could blow up the world or something worse.
Right, exactly. I would agree. I think it's the same as any other
It's like
technology.
nitroglycerin,
Yeah,
You got to
or
be
like
super careful with it.
yeah, or like nuclear energy or something
Exactly.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the optimist in me says, look, we haven't nuked ourselves to oblivion yet, so I think maybe we can pull it out, but
Yeah.
I don't know sometimes. There's some
Yeah.
stupid ass people living today.
Oh, definitely. There's always that
There are some
possibility.
idiots running around today. And what's worse, idiots running countries running around. So it could go bad in a second, but if we can pull it off, I think it'll be fine. My parents are like non-AI, like very anti-AI. Now I'm like the only one who's actually fascinated. Though my dad's kind of growing, kind of because there's this thing on Twitter called Grok that he's been using, and he
Yeah.
really likes it. He's like, "This is cool. Like, look at this. You just ask it something, it'll tell you."
Yeah. Yeah, again, I think it's one of those pieces of technology that it'll be fascinating to see how it develops. And, like anything, it can have good purposes, it can have bad purposes. And I'll just be interested to see what comes of it, like you said.
Same. Yeah, it'll be an interesting development for sure.
Hmm.
Um, though again, I do think we need to be really careful with it because again, it could easily go badly if we're not.
Totally.
Um, um, I mean, I try to be reasonable. I try not to go one way or the other because I don't think that really helps.
Hmm.
If you're just gonna think, oh, it's gonna go badly, like that's not really gonna help anything. Same thing with if you're gonna go
Certainly.
like, oh, it's gonna go really well, we're not gonna
Hmm.
blow each other up at all. I'm not stupid. I know there probably will be struggles that will, but I don't think we're like, when AI shows up, I'm not gonna be one of those people going like, oh, we're screwed. We're gonna blow each other up. It's gonna gain
Totally.
awareness. We're gonna go full Skynet. We need to get our
Yeah.
bunkers. We need to hunker down. I'm not gonna be that guy.
I'm definitely optimistic enough that I don't
I'm like,
think
look,
that
let me put it this
that'll
way.
happen anytime soon.
If we weren't stupid enough, if we were smart enough not to blow each other up with nukes, I think we'll be okay.
Yeah.
I have
Now
to
that's
believe
fair.
that. And
I
that's one
think
of those
that is
things
a
like
fair
I have
conclusion.
to. Because if we
Mm.
don't, pardon my French, we're fucked.
Right, right. Yep, exactly.
like if we are not cautious at least, because I'm like, if we're smart enough to not blow each other up with nukes, I think we'll be okay. But you got to be
Totally.
real careful with it.
Definitely.
Ugh, ugh, you know, which is why we need sci-fi. So it's like here's the worst case scenario.
Exactly. That's when the genre is at its best in my opinion, when it can speak to real world issues in a way that is nuanced and relevant. Totally.
Sure, yeah, I mean that's kind of the one that's really what attracts me to science fiction as well. But it's kind of like fantasy. It's the genre where anything is possible, if
Yeah,
you will.
exactly.
Though with science fiction there is more of a, not so much now, but there is a certain like this has to be somewhat plausible. Where
Hmm.
fantasy you can just go nuts, like this is the literature of the imagination. You can just go nuts and
Right,
do
right.
whatever you want. Like science fiction, there has to be a little real world in there, a little bit. At least sometimes. There's some that kind of go full space opera, Star Wars, which is fine. I like those too.
Yep, that goes into more, and that's funny because then that goes into more science fantasy when you start getting into like Star Wars or Dune or
Yeah, that's the thing.
Warhammer
Like Star Wars is a
40K.
fantasy, like outright.
Yeah, yeah, straight up. Yep, it is a fantasy story set in a sci-fi setting. So
Exactly. Yeah. Or science fantasy if you want to have best of both worlds.
yeah, exactly.
And I'm like,
Yep.
and the thing is, why I think it's a fantasy as regard to science fiction. It's like science fiction more or less speculates on our nature.
Hmm.
Like fantasy is more mythological and kind of, and you can combine the two. You can do like mythological stories in science fiction, but um, Star Wars is definitely a mythological fantasy story, though
Right.
strictly so. Like it followed the
Hmm.
Joseph Campbell um
Yep.
hero's journey, if you will. But that's just how that's how I think of it. I don't know what you
Yeah.
think about it.
No, I would agree. I think it's fundamentally a mythological story because I mean, even George Lucas talked about how he took a lot of inspiration from Hero of a Thousand
He's
Faces,
like, yeah,
and
it's a fantasy. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly the way he talks. It's a film for 12-year-olds. Though that one cracks me up because it's like, well, then why did you make Revenge of the Sith PG-13, George? If you think this is a
He gets
movie for
pretty dark. Like he
12-year-olds.
murders some kids in that
Yeah,
one.
well, did you know that in Revenge of the Sith, the one Padawan that Bail Organa sees get shot by the clones, that's George Lucas's son.
Really?
Yes.
I did not know
George
that.
Lucas murdered his own son in that movie.
Damn, George. That's savage.
Yes. Take your kids to see it. It's like,
I mean, it's not real, so it's fine. But it
right,
gets dark
right.
though. Like, one of
Yeah.
my favorite behind the scenes is like that kid who goes, "Master Skywalker, what are we gonna do?" And he just
Yes.
like apparently like when they were making it, like Hayden Christensen literally went boo to him. And he was
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that was real.
Startled him. Yeah.
I always think that's funny.
Totally.
I love that. Also, oh, so you have read the Forever War. I've been so hesitant to read the Forever War.
Oh, yeah?
Because again, it's like, it's like there's that really weird stage in science fiction where a lot of it was like super pulpy and kind of ridiculous.
Mhm.
And then there was when the new wave showed up and made everything really weird and experimental while still being kind of pulpy and stupid at times. So I
Yeah.
don't know where the Forever War will land in that regard, but maybe
Yeah.
someday I'll read it.
I would highly recommend it. It's one of my favorites. I really enjoy it. I think it lands in that perfect sweet spot for me where it is action heavy, but it is not so pulpy that you aren't taking it seriously.
Fair enough. I'll have to pick it up. I mean, I feel stupid not to because big sci-fi guy. So I got to at some point.
Yeah.
I see you gave Armada by Ernest Cline a 1, so that's fascinating. So why didn't you give? So you gave Holy Terror a 2,
Oh no.
but you gave Armada a 1. I'm curious. I'm like,
Oh,
what
no.
etched that one out? But
Well,
I'm not teasing you. I'm being serious. I haven't read
No,
Armada,
you're
so I
good.
have no opinion on this. I'm just
So Armada, oh my gosh. That one just really frustrated me. It's and I'm trying to make sure I say this in a way that is not too mean to the author, but it really did feel like self-insert fanfic of I'm the cool video game nerd guy and I got a hot girlfriend and I get to save the world. It just and no elaboration on that. It really felt just so juvenile in that way. Of
interesting.
the characters are not deep. This story, I won't spoil it, but the way the book ends just really put me off of it. It just basically ended in a way that made it feel like it was all for nothing. Like the whole conflict was pointless. And that was the final nail in the coffin of why I gave it 1 star. And maybe part of the problem too is the expectation. Like I went into Holy Terror knowing that it was going to not be good. I was not expecting for Armada to get as bad as it did. And then by the end of it, I was just like, I feel like I've wasted my time by reading this. And the worst thing you can ever do, in my opinion, as a reader, is feel like you've wasted your time.
Yeah, I very rarely give 1 stars to anything. I'm like, it's because maybe it speaks to more optimism on my part, but I generally give most people the benefit of the doubt that they're not trying
Sure.
that they're actually trying.
Yeah.
I like to think in my mind that most authors who do this are legitimately trying to do something worthwhile.
Oh, totally.
Doesn't
Yeah.
matter what genre you're in. Doesn't matter what you think about genre or literature or whatever. For my money, most authors are legitimately trying.
Yeah. No, totally.
Very rare that I've seen a book that is like, this is irredeemable. I have to give it a 1. And there are books I have hated in
yeah.
my time that I absolutely hate. But even there's stuff in there that I'm like, okay, this could have been better done.
Yeah,
There's some
exactly.
interesting stuff in there. Very rarely I've given anything like a 1. Unless it's like
Yeah.
Sucker Punch by Zack Snyder, which is still my most hated film of all time.
Really?
Absolutely despise that film. With
Wow,
every
dang.
fiber of my being. I don't want to go into it again, because again, rabbit hole.
Sure.
But, you know, we were talking about Snyder earlier. I'm like, I remember, I'll tell you the story of how I watched it. My buddy, I had a buddy, his name was Dallas, and he lived not too far from me. And we would hang out, this was when I was younger. And he's like, I've been watching this movie called Sucker Punch, and he's been singing this song from Sucker Punch. So I'm like, I got to give this a try. So I ended up watching it and absolutely hating it. So then I walked to my friend Dallas and I'm like, that movie sucked. Why'd you tell me about it? And he's like, dude, I didn't like it either. Like, I'm just like,
he just wanted you to watch it to wallow in misery together, or what?
I guess so. He's like, hey,
funny.
I never said you should watch it. I just said I saw it.
That's
and
funny.
I'm like, you were, like, I was mad. But aside from that, I don't think I've done that to a book yet. I've come close.
Yeah.
Like, I read a comic called Wanted, which was turned into a movie years back, which the movie is light years better than the book. I thought it was bad. I'll just get that out of the way. It is absolutely one of the most abominable comics I have ever read.
Dang. So, well, that's good to know.
There you go. Don't read Wanted. It's terrible. There you go.
It's probably also, I don't have a ton of 1 stars for books also, because most of the time if I'm not liking a book, I just won't finish it.
I'll just put it down.
Most of the time I just DNF it and I'm like, well, that wasn't for me, whatever. So it is rare that a book gets a 1 star for me, because at the very least, if you were able to entertain me enough to get me to the end, there's something there. But
you've never indulged in a hate read?
I don't think I ever have, to be honest. I think
not either. I generally try not to do that.
I think the closest I have come is Holy Terror, but even then, that was more of like a morbid fascination kind of reading rather than a hate read of just like, what was going through your head when you wrote this, and just kind of picking
according
it
to
apart
Frank Miller, 9/11.
Way. Yeah, exactly, and just going kind of sifting through the debris, seeing like what went wrong here.
Yeah, no, though Holy Terror would be up there. I was tempted to give it a 1 star, except for the fact that I thought it was kind of fascinating. Kind of like what you said earlier. It was kind of a weird, morbid fascination looking into where he was at during that time. But that's about it. It's a god-awful book.
It's kind of similar to obviously this is a much better film than Holy Terror is a book, but kind of how Temple of Doom was so affected by George Lucas going through a divorce at the time of making that movie. And that is why that movie is so dark and oppressive compared to the other Indiana Jones movies.
Oh man, if he had just gotten Marsha Lucas back for the prequels, it might have ended up better than what we got.
That probably would have helped significantly.
Because, I mean, if you know the story, Marsha Lucas basically made Star Wars as we know it today.
Right. That her edit was really what saved the first film, especially. Yeah, it's fascinating to get into these creators and just kind of seeing their art as a reflection of their emotional or, personal state at the time that they created it.
Yeah, no, it's always intriguing to me. I like reading about the creators and, what their thought process is.
Definitely.
Even if I don't always like what they do, like Frank Miller, it's fun to
definitely.
It's fun to hear him talk. Like if you ever,
oh yeah,
I don't know if you've ever heard an interview with him or anything. Though it'll, if you haven't, it might surprise you because He's a lot more soft-spoken than what his books
Hmm.
would suggest,
Yeah.
which I always think is
It's
hilarious.
Yes, it's funny because I feel that way about Alan Moore. Like you read his stuff, and then you see him like as a person, and he is quite the personality in real
Yeah,
life.
that like deep rumbling voice. I'm like, yeah, I can
Yes.
imagine that guy writing Watchmen or V for
Yeah.
Vendetta, or
Yeah.
or Swamp Thing, one of his works I
Hmm.
could name. Um, you're just like, man. But like Frank Miller, you're just like, oh, this guy seems like a night. I would like him personally, probably if I met him.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you watch same thing with Zack Snyder in interviews, he
Yeah,
seems like
exactly. You're just like,
a very personable guy.
well, yeah, exactly. It's like you seem like a nice dude. Like, come on, man, don't do that. Make better movies.
Right, right.
I
Well, we've talked around a lot of stuff. Were there any other topics you wanted to
there
cover
was
or get into?
there was one I wanted to get to before we ended this conversation. I did want to ask you kind of. I asked a couple of people who I've had on, who are Christians, Christian
Mm,
related,
mm,
kind of how your beliefs affect what you do. It was interesting. I had a guy
uh-huh.
named Josh who's called the Reformed Reader, though he's generally more of like he's approaching things from a Christian perspective. I don't know if that's what you do
Uh-huh.
on your channel.
Mm.
But is that kind of what you do, or are you just like a Christian who happens to like all this stuff, and sometimes that kind of comes into what you do?
Yeah, I it's interesting. That's something that I've definitely kind of in terms of the video creation side of things have definitely played around with. I would say my most if you will, my most overtly Christian video would be my Theology of Alien 3 video where I kind of dive into that movie and look at
That should
all
be an
the different.
interesting video.
Yeah,
I watched it.
I enjoyed making that because I think that film has a lot more kind of religious symbolism that a lot of other people might not recognize, and
Hmm.
I felt like that was something with my background I could kind of bring to the table and talk about on some authority. I would by no means consider myself a great philosopher or religious teacher,
Oh,
but
no, I'm not saying you're not that. I don't know. Maybe you are, but I wasn't trying to like imply that.
no, 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 you're good. But in terms of how it affects like my content as well as what I read, I think for me, my faith really kind of grounds me. It's my moral center. It's what I come back to when things are rough in my personal life, and it does affect kind of the lens through which I view particularly the themes and the message of a story. I would
Mm-hmm.
say is where it kind of comes the biggest into play. So that even if a story has maybe content that I would disagree with, if there's a message at the core or a some kind of theme that I feel like relates to my faith in some way, I can really latch on to that and get a lot out of it.
Yeah, it's also curious, because you're a science fiction fan, and there a lot of people tend to equate science fiction with secularism, but I think science fiction
Sure.
does have a lot of things to say about religion, at least in
Hmm.
some of them anyway.
I definitely think so. Because like the just going back to an earlier example with like Jurassic Park, even
Hmm.
though I wouldn't necessarily call that like a Christian story, a big theme around that story, both the book and the movie, is man trying to play God in a
Hmm.
sense. And it comes up a lot, and
Hmm.
so I can really latch on to that theme, for example, and really speculate about that and same thing with I think why sci-fi fascinates me so much is because of how much it relates to the modern world of as a believer as a Christian, my thoughts on AI and cuz for me I would believe that only humans possess a soul, but
Hmm.
what is the philosophical implication of that when you run up against something that is resembles a human but is not human. I think you can get into some really interesting discussions with that.
Yeah, that's kind of what interests me as well about like AI. Anyway, is like
Hmm.
a machine become human? What would
Right,
that look
right.
like? And I mean,
Hmm.
it's one of my like favorite sci-fi themes or tropes or whatever you want to call that. I'm very fascinated by that.
Yeah, and in terms of as a content creator, I think that's something I've still been kind of experimenting with because I wouldn't say that my faith is the central focus of my channel, but
Mm-hmm.
I would be lying if I said it didn't affect what I read and what I get out of a story. It definitely influences it. So I just and I'm
Sure.
someone
Yeah,
that
you seem
I
more.
yeah,
I don't want to say that because I don't want to sound like I'm insulting Josh. Josh has a good channel going, but like you seem
sure.
more like open to other views, I
Mm,
guess,
okay.
than like
Yeah.
Josh. Because like Josh comes from a very like more, he has a very like strict thing of what he likes to read. He tries
Mhm.
to, or at least how he explained it to me was he like um he tries to not just think of himself. He tries to think of who could be watching his channel, like families and
Mhm.
whatnot, which
Mhm.
is totally fine. I'm not, not
Mhm.
nothing wrong with that. Now I'll admit, and he's admitted this too. It can be a little contradictory, what he decides to think is pretty good and what he does not like for whatever
Mhm.
reason. Like he just recently did a review of Dune, which I thought was
Mm.
really fascinating. And I'm always curious when I see religious people read like Dune because I mean
Mm.
another one of my hot takes is I'm not the biggest Dune fan. I think
Mm.
it sucks too because there's a lot of really interesting stuff in that book that should be talked about and is really fascinating. But um, I just don't care for the way it's told. If that
I
makes sense.
gotcha. Yeah.
Um, but he was just kind of like, yeah, there's some good stuff here, but I didn't really like all the Messiah stuff. And I'm like, that's interesting. I thought you would be really interested in the Messiah stuff that he would say, but at the same
Mm.
time, I can see how he might not care for that because
Mhm.
Dune questions the idea of a Messiah. Like, what would that look
Mhm.
like?
Right, exactly.
And Paul Atreides is not Jesus Christ. He is just a regular dude
Yeah.
who has
Yeah.
these special gifts.
Certainly. Yeah, I it's interesting because I definitely am someone that I don't want to be afraid to have my beliefs challenged, if that makes sense. I
Mm-hmm.
want to read stuff. I do believe it's even a biblical principle of iron sharpens iron, that you should be able to be confronted with other views and be challenged and see how when the rubber meets the road with your faith. and
Mm-hmm.
uh and it's interesting talking about Dune because obviously, Frank Herbert was an atheist, and there's
Was
a
he?
lot of
I thought he was
I
like
think
I thought he
so.
was like a Buddhist or something. I don't know. I don't know.
Maybe agnostic. I may be going too hard with atheist. Maybe he was more agnostic,
I don't know.
but he definitely wasn't a Christian. That that
No.
that much is clear. But I still get a lot out of that story because I guess the lens I see it through is more of the Paul is setting himself up as a Messiah-like figure,
Mm-hmm.
but he's not God. He is not the Son of God, and he knows that.
He's
And
just a
so I
guy. He has very
yeah,
special
exactly.
He has special abilities, but he's just a person at the end. He's just a regular person at the end of the day.
Right, exactly. And now, could someone take that as an indictment against religion in general? Certainly. But I guess I look at it more through the lens of more of a cult sort of lens of this
Mm-hmm.
is what happens when one man sets himself up as a godlike figure, knowing full well he is not. So I guess that's how I'm able to resonate with that particular story.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I mean, it's I don't think like I don't think like Dune is like condemning religion or anything.
Mm,
I think that's a very shallow reading of it. I think
mm,
it's more that what's the term I would use? It's exploring how like people use that, how people
mm.
use religious narratives, you know, belief systems for their own aims, and
Yeah,
even how like
certainly.
good people can get warped by something beyond their control.
Definitely.
It also asks like, can humans become God, which I find which can be interesting at times, which is
Mhm.
kind of like something Alan Moore explores that in Watchmen. particularly
Definitely.
with Dr. Manhattan,
Hmm.
where it's basically like, could a person become a god? And if that could happen, what would matter to that being? You know?
Yeah. What are the implications?
Yeah, exactly. Um, uh, yeah. I did forget to mention, as a bit of an aside before we continue this, Ed Brubaker's another comic writer I really enjoy. I also saw you're reading his Captain America at the moment on your Goodreads, so I
Yeah,
I like him as well.
I'm really enjoying that so far. I'm about halfway through that run,
Especially if
and
he
it's
works
really
with
good.
Sean Phillips. Great stuff. But his Captain America is
Gotcha.
very good too. But yeah, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt the.
No, I think that's about all I had to say on that. Is that it's not the main focus of my channel, but I also believe in kind of wearing my heart on my sleeve. I'm not trying to trick people or deceive people. Like
Mm-hmm.
I have my beliefs, and but at the same time, I want to make sure that my content everyone can consume it and not feel alienated. And in the same way that I don't mind having my beliefs challenged, I would hope people who watch my content don't mind having their beliefs challenged as well, and not in a antagonistic way, but in as, hey, we're all people trying to find our place in the world. And I think fiction is a very interesting avenue for exploring those ideas.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a I mean, I'm describing my own spiritual beliefs. I would say I believe in God. I just don't really like organized religion all that much.
Gotcha.
I was raised Christian. I still would say I believe a lot of those core tenets of, but I don't know if I would call myself a Christian though.
Gotcha.
It's kind of it's kind of complicated explaining. I wouldn't call myself like a deist or anything because I think deism is stupid. It's basically like, oh, it's like trying to believe in God and be an atheist at the same time. It just doesn't work as far as I'm
Mm,
concerned.
mm.
I for my
Gotcha.
money. And there's some people who might go like, "Oh, it's more complicated than that." I'm like, "I'm sorry. For my money, you either believe it or you don't." Now, agnosticism's totally fine because at least they're just acknowledging, "Hey, we don't know if there's a god running around, creating stuff." That's
Mhm.
fine. But like I
Mhm.
feel like deism, particularly some of the older ones like, Voltaire or Thomas Paine, they were just atheists. Just
Mhm.
for some reason they thought there was a god in the sky who created the world and then just went off to do his own thing. I'm like, that's stupid, in my opinion. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
I getcha. No, yeah, and I totally get that perspective. I'm very much a sola scriptura guy in the sense that I think at the end of the day that scripture reigns supreme for me, and if
Mm.
the church contradicts scripture, then the church needs to fix itself in
You'll just like
whatever.
walk away like, nope. No, I'm kidding. I don't know.
Nah, you're good. So I definitely am very much someone who wants to stick with that specifically
And even then,
as
there's, I
kind of
mean,
the
I'll try. I
compass.
don't want to dive too deeply into the religion rabbit hole. I've been saying that a couple times, but I'll indulge a little bit. I'll do a little bit if you
Sure,
don't mind.
sure.
But there's also some things in the Bible where it's like, okay, God in the Old Testament, like, he can be kind of, yeah, what's the word? He can be kind of
Judgmental.
prickly sometimes.
Ah, gotcha, gotcha.
And then, Jesus shows up and he's like the just nicest guy on the planet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I'm going to heal you because you're a good guy. And it's like, that guy's
Mm-hmm.
full God and full man. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Which, I
Right,
won't say
right.
if I believe it's true or not,
Mm-hmm.
but, there's just some things I'm like, I don't know.
No, I getcha. It's definitely. I think a lot of that also is contextual if you
Hmm.
kind of get into the nitty gritty of it. But
Like,
I
there's
I
a part in the
definitely.
Bible, is actually just because I listen to the Bible every year, because it's a thing me and my dad do.
Oh, cool.
And, there's a part where Moses and the people are out just wandering around the desert, and the people start complaining because the food sucks. And God's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, yeah? Here's some poisonous snakes. Screw you. And then Moses shows up and is like, we need help with this. This isn't good. And he's like, okay, fine. So make this little snake thing, and let them look at it, and they'll be healed. I'm just like, God, what are you doing? Like,
Mhm.
what are you doing? That's what.
Mm.
Again, prickly is a good word. Which, look,
Sure,
I get
sure.
it. They were not being they were being kind of They were being kind of irritating. But I'm just kind of like,
Uh-huh.
I'm like, that's a little extreme.
Mm, mm.
In my opinion, I don't know.
Sure,
I'm sure
sure.
there's some scholars who might go like, well, blah 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 blah. I don't know.
Right, right.
I'm not a scholar at all, so
Nah, you're good, man.
yeah, it's kind of like, and then there's like, how God created the earth. It's like, I know in the Bible it says my time is not your time and all that, but like it's been proven that evolution is a thing, and I don't think the Bible says evolution is not a thing. I don't
Mm,
think.
mm.
I don't know. Well, I mean, I'm listening to it right now, but I don't remember specifically if it mentions like, evolution isn't a thing, yada yada. None of that. I don't know if it says that,
I getcha.
but
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of different
there's some
schools of
there's some
thought on that
hurdles
one.
there, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
But then what kind of is like, okay, so this Jesus guy shows up, does some stuff, gets crucified, comes back to life, and then just vanishes or whatever.
Mhm.
Never been able to find the body. So again, you're just kind of like, is this true?
Mhm.
Because I actually read Mere Christianity recently by C.S. Lewis,
Oh, very nice.
which I thought was an interesting book. It's very much or as I've been calling it, it's kind of like Christianity for dummies in a way. It's kind of him
It's a
going
good
like, oh,
one.
it's kind of like, okay, here's what we believe. This is why we believe it. There you go. I don't
Yeah,
think it's gonna, convert like a hardened atheist anytime soon. But
sure.
it's a very simple like, this is what we think. This is how Christians think. This is what they
Mhm.
believe.
Mhm.
And he makes a point, and it's been kind of nitpicked over the years. Or some people are like, oh, what about this? But he basically goes like, okay, so Jesus either was lying, was insane, or he really was who he said he was.
Mhm.
Now, again, there's people who could nitpick that. But I kind of sit there and go like like that's a good point though. I think the point is sound, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. I don't know if the reasoning is all, correct and all that, but like
Mhm.
the point I think is sound.
Definitely.
It's like, okay,
I
so
think it's a good one.
it's like we've never been able to find Jesus. So again, they either really did a good job covering up like, where they buried him or whatever, or he really is who he says he is.
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know what you think about this.
Yeah, I think that they typically call it the Lord Liar Lunatic argument that
Uh-huh.
C.S. Lewis gives. I think that's a strong one.
Mm-hmm.
I think some also really compelling evidence is the fact that you got guys like Josephus and Tacitus who were not Christian, and yet they testify to the fact in their writings that Jesus did in fact exist,
Mm-hmm.
and that he was crucified. Obviously,
Well, yeah,
they
I
didn't.
think most people will agree that he existed, but it's like the Son of God thing that most people don't agree
Oh
on.
yeah, of course. That's of course the big one that the entire faith hinges on, and even
Mm-hmm.
Paul himself says in the New Testament, he says that if Christ is not raised, then our faith is meaningless,
Mm-hmm.
because he wouldn't be the Son of God at that point. And I
Mm-hmm.
do think that personally, I do think that the empty tomb, the extra biblical writings, and just the fact that again you had 12 guys who one of them betrayed him, the
Uh-huh.
rest of them denied him, and then all of a sudden 3 days later they're proclaiming he's risen and are starting this whole movement.
And even more people than that saw him. Like he showed up to like a
Right.
crowd, if I recall right. He showed up to these two guys who were walking on the road.
Yep, yep.
I think he showed
Mhm.
up to his brothers, if I remember correctly.
Yep. Yep. So, it's definitely something happened there, you know? That they wouldn't just go from cowering in fear, afraid of the Romans, to now all of a sudden they're proclaiming this guy boldly in the streets,
Yeah, they're just like,
unafraid
this
of
is real,
persecution.
guys. which that always kind of am like, it's kind of funny how much they doubt him in the books in the
Yeah,
Bible,
yeah.
and you're like, bro, you saw me. I would be frustrated if I were Jesus. I'd be like, guys,
Yeah.
you saw me do these things. You don't think I
That
can do that?
right, exactly.
Come on.
That's another thing that I personally would say is something that testifies to the authenticity of the narrative is the fact that all of the apostles are incredibly flawed individuals.
Hmm.
That yeah, they constantly doubt him. They are constantly not understanding what he is saying. I don't think you would write that about yourself unless you were being humble and genuine about where you were spiritually and mentally at that point in your life.
Yeah, my dad often puts it like this, and it's always because he's always asking me like, so what hold you back? What hold you back? What hold you back? And I'm. It's kind of hard to talk about at times, but like
Sure.
and he points out to me, he's like, okay, so if this were real, I'm like, and he's like, he goes, if this were fake, and I'm like, okay, why would the people who witnessed it be women? Who he pointed out to me because he likes to read a lot about this stuff. Women who back in the day, if there was like a murder and a woman witnessed it, sorry, buddy, that murder didn't happen. His
Right.
words, not
Right.
mine.
Mm-hmm.
If it weren't true, why did he show himself to women first?
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing, why would he trust tax collectors, poor people, fishermen? Why would he trust them over the authorities for
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
authorities? And I'm like, those are good points,
Yeah, and I would agree with that too, because yeah, a woman was not allowed to testify in court in that area and at that point in time, and again, yeah, the fact that Jesus chose as his followers, he didn't choose rabbis, he didn't choose religious scholars, he just chose everyday individuals, which would have been very radical for his day and age, especially.
Yeah, and like even in the Bible, they're like, "Oh, I'm not worthy, Jesus," and he's like, "Well,
Hmm.
come follow me,"
Yeah, yeah,
Though every time I hear that now, I always think of the. I don't know if you've ever seen Monty Python, The Holy Grail, but they're
oh
like
yeah.
they pray to God, and he's like, "Stop groveling! I'm so sick of people, I'm sick of people telling me I don't deserve this and rah, rah, rah," I'm like,
Right.
that God's based, man. I love that guy. He's just like, bro,
It's a
just
fun
ask.
movie.
It's a great movie. I love that film. But yeah, no, that's a struggle, is it not?
Definitely. And I mean, it's some people will take it as a cop out answer. A lot of it does come down to faith in the sense that, none of us were there. And none of us living in the modern era were there to witness it. Um, but like you said, I think there's some very compelling evidence in that regard. And kind of bringing it back around to what we were talking about before, I consider myself to be an intellectually curious individual.
Mm-hmm.
There's often a stigma I've found against Christians that they are intellectually incurious, that they think
Mm-hmm.
they have all the answers and they don't want to learn. And I just think that's plainly not true. I think that personally, my belief in God motivates me to want to learn even more about the world and about the human heart and how we interact with one another.
Yeah, there's almost this attitude I've noticed with a lot of people, and like in America, probably because Christianity is the most like popular religion out here. But I
Hmm.
always notice that like people seem to think of Christianity as this like conformity religion, you
Right,
know,
right.
like the status quo religion. And then I'm like, but that always just kind of flabbergasts me because I'm like, read the scriptures. It is the exact opposite. What
Hmm.
Jesus actually
Totally.
said was the complete opposite.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's something I tell people time and time again, yeah, everyone has the potential to be hypocritical. And I mean, good grief, this the
There's
standard
so
that
many.
Jesus the standard that Jesus set is perfection, and none of us are going to perfectly live up to it. but that is why he gives the Holy Spirit. So we strive for it, even if in this life we won't hit it. And if there's ever a point where something a follower says that contradicts what the big man said, you go with what the big man said.
Yeah, like there was this stupid tweet I read the other day where someone was going off about like how he thinks like Christianity's kind of a cop out. It's like, oh, so you can just, say, "Oh God, help me and you're forgiven."
Mm,
I'm like, "No, that's not
mhm.
how that works."
Yeah.
And then I read Mere Christianity, which kind of counters that point, saying, "No, repentance is like the hardest thing you can do because you
Yeah.
basically have to reject everything that you are and
Mhm.
say I was wrong."
Yeah,
Which
exactly. And
that
we
sounds simple. It's really not. Like, it's
we
really
don't
hard.
like admitting when we're wrong, and we don't like fessing up to our mistakes. That is not something generally we like to do, certainly.
No, but I digress.
Mm. But I hope that that gives at least some food for thought on kind
Hmm.
of my thoughts and on that. And I've been very blessed in that my channel has been kind of a way for me to talk about this stuff, but also include some of my perspective in it as well.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, we've been going on for a while now, and I do have some other things I wanted to do this evening, but this has been a very great conversation. Thank you for coming on here today,
Of course, thank
and
you for inviting me. This has been good.
hanging out for a while. As I like to do before the end of these, if you have any social media, feel free to share.
Sure thing. So if you want to follow my channel, Thomas Wrights is the name of the channel. I talk about all sci-fi and fantasy media that interests me. I'm also on Twitter and on Instagram or X, whatever you want to call it. I don't care. I'm on X or Twitter,
I
and
just
I'm on
call it Twitter.
Instagram
I
as
refuse
well.
to call it X.
I don't really care one way or the other, but you can find that on my about page on my channel.
It's not even because
Um,
I hate Elon Musk. It's stupid. But sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
You're good. That's about all. Yeah, you can follow me on my channel. Appreciate the time. Thank you for having me on.
Oh yeah, we should do this again. I'll definitely
Yeah.
see if I can get you on for State of Science Fiction because I haven't done that in a while.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Definitely let me know, and I'll try to check out the other episodes as well to kind of just get a feel for the format of the show and whatnot.
All right. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. I definitely did. And until next time, see you guys later. Bye bye.